Maria moved with a practiced, quiet grace through the sprawling kitchen of the Henderson estate. Her hands, calloused from years of scrubbing and polishing, efficiently wiped down the gleaming granite countertops. Every surface in this house, from the antique mahogany tables to the polished silver, reflected the immense wealth of its owner, Mr. Henderson. For Maria, this house was a world away from her own cramped apartment, a place where she spent her days earning just enough to keep a roof over her head and food on the table for herself and her daughter, Elena. She dreamed constantly of a different life for Elena, a life free from the constant worry about money, a life where opportunities weren't just for others. Elena was everything Maria could have hoped for in a daughter. She was bright, ambitious, and possessed a quick mind that Maria knew deserved more than what their meager income could offer. Elena wasn't one to sit around and complain. She worked odd jobs after school and on weekends, tutoring younger kids, helping out at a local bakery, anything to contribute to their household and, more importantly, to save up for her education. She wanted to go to college, to study something in technology, a field that seemed to promise a future far removed from Maria's domestic work. But even with Elena's hard work, the cost of higher education felt like an insurmountable mountain. Maria knew Elena needed a break, a chance to meet someone who could open doors, someone stable. That's why, through a distant acquaintance who knew someone, she had painstakingly arranged a blind date for Elena. The young man, Kevin, was described as well off, from a good family. Maria had painted a picture of him to Elena, emphasizing his prospects, his stability, and the importance of making a good impression. "Elena, please, just go," Maria had pleaded earlier that week, her voice thick with hope and a hint of desperation. "It could be good for you. You deserve something nice." Elena, however, wasn't so sure. She shifted uncomfortably at the idea of a prearranged date, especially one where she felt pressured to impress. Her natural inclination was to be herself, but she knew herself came with the baggage of their financial struggles. "Mom, I don't know," Elena had said, her brow furrowed. "What if he wants to go somewhere expensive? I don't have money for that." The thought of being out of place, of not being able to contribute, gnawed at her. She hated feeling like a burden, or worse, like a charity case. Maria's heart ached. She looked at her daughter, so full of potential, so deserving, and felt the familiar sting of their poverty. With trembling hands, she reached into the pocket of her apron, pulling out a crumpled $5 bill. It was all she had left from her week's earnings after bills and groceries. Her eyes, usually so strong, welled up. "Here, mijija," she said, pressing the worn bill into Elena's palm. "It's all I can spare for the date. Just make it count, okay? Try to have a good time." The unspoken weight of Maria's hopes and dreams for Elena hung heavy in the air. This small act, this offering of her last $5, spoke volumes about their situation and Maria's desperate, unwavering love. Unbeknownst to them, Mr. Henderson, the millionaire homeowner, had just walked into the adjacent study. He was a man known for his quiet demeanor, often observing more than he spoke. He had a way of noticing small details, a sharp sense for the undercurrents of emotion around him. He heard Maria's soft, pleading tone, then the rustle of the bill, and finally, Maria's choked words about the $5. He didn't hear the full context, but the snippet was enough. He felt a pang of empathy, a familiar ache for the struggles of people like Maria, so different from his own insulated world. He watched Maria wipe a tear from her eye before returning to her work, a thoughtful expression settling on his face. Later that evening, Elena stood in front of the cracked mirror in her small bedroom, trying to make her best, albeit worn outfit look presentable. The dress was a simple blue, a hand-me-down that she had carefully mended and pressed. She tried to project an image of confidence, but inside, a mix of hope and anxiety churned. She smoothed her hair, checked her simple, clean makeup, and practiced a small, hopeful smile. The $5 bill felt heavy in her pocket, a constant reminder of her mother's sacrifice and the expectations riding on this evening. Meanwhile, Kevin was already at the moderately priced restaurant, a place he had chosen, though he privately felt it was a bit beneath him. He scrolled through his phone, looking bored. He was already judging his date, sight unseen. Hope she's not a total mess, he muttered to himself, a subtle complaint about the chosen restaurant already forming in his mind. He expected a certain caliber, a certain look, and he wasn't often disappointed. The restaurant itself was buzzing, lively, but not overly fancy. It was the kind of place where a good meal could be had without breaking the bank, at least for most people. For Elena, even this place felt like a stretch, a step into a world she wasn't quite part of. As she finally left her apartment, the streetlight casting long shadows, the weight of her mother's hopes and the $5 felt heavier than ever. Mr. Henderson, still awake in his study, watched from his window as Elena walked down the street, her silhouette disappearing into the night. He had a thoughtful, almost concerned look on his face. Elena arrived at the restaurant, her heart thumping a little faster than usual. She spotted Kevin almost immediately, sitting at a table near the window, his attention fixed on his phone. As she approached, she noticed he didn't even look up until she was right beside the table. When he finally did, his eyes swept over her quickly, a faint, almost imperceptible frown creasing his brow. It wasn't a welcoming look, more like an assessment, and not a very positive one. "You must be Elena," he said, his voice flat, devoid of any real warmth. He didn't stand up. Elena felt a blush creep up her neck. She managed a small, polite smile and slid into the chair opposite him. "Hi, Kevin. Thanks for meeting me," she replied, trying to sound confident, despite the immediate chill she felt. Kevin just nodded, then went back to scrolling on his phone for a moment, before looking up again. "So, you're Maria's daughter, right?" he asked, as if confirming a suspicion. "Yeah, I figured. The dress, it's, interesting, very classic." The word classic hung in the air, clearly meant as a thinly veiled criticism. Elena felt her stomach clench. She had spent so long trying to make this dress look its best, and his first comment was a backhanded insult. A waiter approached, handing them menus. Elena took hers, her gaze immediately dropping to the prices. Her fingers traced the columns of numbers, a knot forming in her throat. Everything seemed so expensive. The cheapest appetizer was more than her $5. She started doing quick mental math, trying to figure out if she could even afford a glass of water without dipping into her mother's precious $5 bill. The weight in her pocket felt heavier, almost suffocating. Kevin, meanwhile, didn't even glance at the prices. He barely looked at the menu. "I'll have the Wagyu steak, medium rare, and a glass of your finest Cabernet Sauvignon," he announced to the waiter, without so much as a glance in Elena's direction. "And for my date," he added, finally turning to her with an expectant, slightly bored look. Elena flinched. The Wagyu steak was easily $50, probably more. Her eyes darted back to the menu, searching desperately for something, anything, within her meager budget. She felt her face heating up. "Oh, I think I'll just have the side salad, please, she stammered, pointing to the cheapest item she could find, hoping it didn't sound too pathetic. And water, please. The waiter, a young man with kind eyes, gave her a sympathetic glance before jotting down their orders. The conversation that followed was an agonizing display of Kevin's self-importance. He talked endlessly about his investments, his connections, and the exclusive clubs he frequented. He didn't ask Elena a single question about herself, not really. Instead, he steered the conversation towards wealth and status, as if trying to gauge her worth. So, what does your family do, Elena? He finally asked, but it sounded less like genuine curiosity and more like a probe, a test. My dad's in real estate, very successful. We have a vacation home in Aspen, you know. Elena felt her cheeks burn. She could lie, make something up. But she hated lying. She took a deep breath, deciding to be honest. My mother is a maid, she said, her voice soft but steady. She works for Mr. Henderson and my father. He passed away a few years ago. We've been struggling a bit, financially. She hoped he would understand, maybe even offer a word of kindness. She watched his face for any sign of empathy. Instead, a smirk played on his lips. A maid? Wow. So you're like old money, but like in reverse, right? He chuckled, a harsh, humorless sound. That's unexpected. I mean, I thought you'd be more established, you know? Like, my family only dates people from certain backgrounds. It's just how it is. He leaned back in his chair, a smug look on his face, clearly enjoying her discomfort. He glanced around the restaurant, as if to make sure others were noticing his superiority. Elena felt a cold wave wash over her. Her hands trembled slightly under the table. The words were like tiny daggers, each one twisting deeper. Other diners, she noticed, were starting to cast curious glances their way. Kevin's voice wasn't particularly loud, but his condescending tone was unmistakable. I mean, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with being a maid, he continued, though his tone suggested the opposite. It's just not really my scene, you know? I prefer someone who can keep up, someone who understands the finer things in life, not someone who has to count pennies for a side salad. He gestured dismissively at her plate, which now held a small, unappetizing pile of lettuce. Elena felt a hot tear prick her eye, but she blinked it back. She wouldn't cry. Not here. Not in front of him. This was beyond humiliating. She reached into her pocket, her fingers closing around the crumpled $5 bill. With a surge of desperate defiance, she pulled it out and placed it on the table, pushing it towards him. This, she said, her voice surprisingly steady, is all I have. My mother gave it to me. It was all she could spare for this date. She looked him straight in the eye, her humiliation giving way to a quiet, burning anger. I guess it's not enough for your finer things in life, is it? Kevin stared at the bill, then burst out laughing. It was a loud, mocking laugh that echoed in the relatively quiet restaurant. $5. Seriously, what am I supposed to do with $5, Elena? Buy you another side salad? He picked up the bill between two fingers, as if it were contaminated, and let it drop back onto the table. You know what? Just forget it. I'll pay for my own. You can keep your souvenir. His words were laced with pure venom, designed to cut her as deeply as possible. He made a show of pulling out his wallet, a thick leather one, and throwing a credit card onto the table. What Elena didn't know, couldn't possibly have known, was that Mr. Henderson was dining just a few tables away. He had chosen a discreet corner, enjoying a quiet meal and observing the usual evening bustle. He had recognized Elena when she first walked in, and his attention had been subtly drawn to her table. He had seen Kevin's dismissive demeanor, Elena's discomfort with the menu, and Kevin's extravagant order. He had overheard the increasingly loud and cruel conversation, his initial pang of empathy turning into a quiet, simmering anger. He watched as Kevin publicly humiliated Elena, mocking her family and her meager contribution. When Elena placed the $5 bill on the table and Kevin laughed and ridiculed her, Mr. Henderson felt a cold fury settle in his chest. He had seen enough. This young man had crossed a line. Mr. Henderson watched Kevin's performance with a growing sense of disgust. He had seen many arrogant young men in his life, but rarely one so openly cruel, so devoid of basic human decency. The way Kevin had picked up the $5 bill, as if it were trash, and then let it drop back down, was a calculated insult designed to crush Elena. It wasn't just about the money. It was about tearing down a person's dignity. The young woman, Maria's daughter, who worked so hard and carried herself with such quiet grace, did not deserve this. Not a single bit of it. Mr. Henderson felt a cold resolve harden within him. He was a man who valued respect above almost everything else, and what he was witnessing was the absolute absence of it. He couldn't just sit there and watch it continue. He placed his napkin neatly beside his half-eaten meal, a movement that was deliberate and calm despite the anger churning inside him. His decision was made. He would not allow this humiliation to stand. Pushing back his chair, he rose slowly, his tall frame commanding attention even when he didn't intend it. He walked with an unhurried, purposeful stride towards Elena and Kevin's table. Every step was measured, a silent declaration of intent. He moved like a man who knew exactly where he was going and what he was going to do. As he approached, Kevin was still smirking, basking in his own perceived triumph, while Elena sat there, her shoulders slightly slumped, trying desperately to hold back tears. Mr. Henderson stopped directly beside their table, casting a quiet shadow over them. Kevin looked up, startled, his smug expression faltering as he met Mr. Henderson's steady, unblinking gaze. Elena, sensing a new presence, also lifted her head, her eyes wide with surprise and a touch of fear, wondering if she was about to face yet another public reprimand. "Excuse me," Mr. Henderson said, his voice calm and even, yet carrying an undeniable weight that cut through the restaurant's ambient noise. He looked directly at Kevin. "Mr. Kevin, I believe?" He had heard the name earlier, during Kevin's loud proclamations. Kevin, visibly flustered by the unexpected interruption, stammered, Yes, that's me. Can I help you?" His tone, just moments ago so full of arrogance, had shifted to one of hesitant deference. He didn't recognize Mr. Henderson, but the older man's expensive suit, confident bearing, and air of authority were enough to make him instantly wary. Mr. Henderson offered a small, polite nod. "I couldn't help but overhear parts of your conversation, and I must say, I find your conduct quite unbecoming." He paused, letting the words sink in. He didn't raise his voice, didn't make a scene, but his quiet disapproval was far more impactful than any shouting match could have been. There's a certain way one treats a lady, regardless of circumstance, and what I've just witnessed falls far short of that standard. His gaze flickered to Elena, a brief, reassuring look, before returning to Kevin. "Respect, Mr. Kevin, is not something you demand. It is something you earn. And judging by your behavior tonight, you have earned very little of it." Kevin's face flushed crimson. He opened his mouth to protest, to make an excuse, but no words came out. He was completely out of his depth. He was used to bullying those he deemed beneath him, but Mr. Henderson was clearly not one of them. The millionaire's presence alone seemed to deflate Kevin's inflated ego, leaving him sputtering. "As for the bill," Mr. Henderson continued, his voice still calm, "I believe I can assist with that." He reached into his own wallet, a sleek black leather one, and pulled out a credit card. "Consider it my treat. A small gesture to ensure that this young lady's evening isn't entirely ruined by poor company." He placed the card on the table, pushing it subtly towards the waiter who had just arrived, drawn by the commotion. "Please charge both meals to this." Elena stared, utterly bewildered. She knew Mr. Henderson, of course, as her mother's employer, but she had never seen him act like this. He was always so quiet, so reserved. To see him step in, to defend her against Kevin's nastiness, was completely unexpected and profoundly moving. A wave of relief washed over her, mixed with a deep, almost overwhelming gratitude. Her eyes, still a little red from holding back tears, now shone with a different kind of moisture. She wanted to thank him, but the words caught in her throat. Kevin, meanwhile, was scrambling to regain some semblance of composure. "Oh no, sir, that's really not necessary. I was just about to pay for everything myself. Just a misunderstanding, you know." He tried to smile, a weak, forced attempt that didn't reach his eyes. "Ellen and I were just having a lively discussion." He even tried to push Mr. Henderson's card back. Mr. Henderson simply raised an eyebrow, a silent, withering look that told Kevin his excuses were transparent and pathetic. "I think not," he said, his voice firm. "The offer stands, and I insist." There was no room for argument. The waiter, sensing the tension and the clear authority in Mr. Henderson's voice, discreetly took the card. Kevin, defeated and utterly humiliated himself now, could do little but nod. He mumbled something about needing to use the restroom and practically bolted from the table, leaving Elena and Mr. Henderson alone. He didn't even glance back. His grand display of superiority had crumbled into dust, leaving him exposed and foolish. Once Kevin was out of sight, Mr. Henderson turned his full attention to Elena. He pulled out the chair Kevin had abandoned and sat down, facing her. His expression softened, the anger replaced by a genuine warmth. "Elena, are you all right?" he asked, his voice gentle. "I apologize for interfering, but I couldn't in good conscience let that young man continue his appalling behavior." Elena finally found her voice, though it was still a little shaky. "Mr. Henderson, I don't know what to say. Thank you. Thank you so much." A single tear escaped and traced a path down her cheek. "It was awful." He nodded understandingly. "No one deserves to be treated that way, Elena. Especially not you." He looked at her, truly looked at her, beyond the maid's daughter, beyond the humiliating date. He saw intelligence in her eyes, resilience in her posture, despite the recent ordeal. "You handled yourself with remarkable grace under pressure. Most people would have just left." "I almost did," she admitted, a small, wry smile touching her lips. "But then I thought about my mother, and the $5. She still had the crumpled bill clutched in her hand. Mr. Henderson's gaze fell on the $5 bill. He understood its significance, the weight of hope and sacrifice it represented. "That $5, he said softly, "tells me more about your character than any expensive meal could. It speaks of integrity, of love for your family, and of an honest spirit. Those are qualities far more valuable than anything that young man possesses." He paused, a new thought forming in his mind. He had seen her dedication, her quiet strength, and now her unwavering dignity. Elena, he began, his voice thoughtful. I've often wondered about your aspirations. What are your dreams? What do you truly want to do with your life? He leaned forward slightly, his eyes conveying genuine interest. He wasn't just offering comfort. He was probing, looking for a spark, an opportunity to truly help, not just fix a terrible evening. He saw immense potential in her, a determination that had been hidden under the weight of circumstance. Elena returned home that evening, the events of the date replaying in her mind like a jarring film. The humiliation, Kevin's cruel words, and then the unexpected, almost cinematic intervention of Mr. Henderson. It was a whirlwind, leaving her feeling both emotionally drained and strangely invigorated. She found Maria in the kitchen, wiping down the counters, a worried look etched on her face. Elena, how was it? You're home early, Maria asked, her voice tinged with concern. She immediately noticed the faint redness around Elena's eyes, the way her shoulders were slightly slumped. Elena took a deep breath, steeling herself. It was a disaster, Mama. Kevin was awful, truly awful. She recounted the details, her voice wavering as she described Kevin's condescending remarks, his extravagant order, and the public shaming over the $5. Maria listened, her own face falling with every word, her hands clenching into fists at the thought of her daughter enduring such cruelty. Tears welled in Maria's eyes, not for herself, but for the pain Elena had suffered. But then Elena's expression shifted, a small, hopeful smile appearing despite the lingering hurt. But then, Mr. Henderson, Mama, he was there. He saw everything. She explained how he had intervened, how he had silenced Kevin with just a few words, and how he had paid for their meal. He was so kind, Mama. He told Kevin off, but in such a calm way. And then he sat with me, and he actually listened. He asked me about my dreams. Maria's face transformed, the worry replaced by a profound relief, and then a glimmer of hope. Mr. Henderson? Our Mr. Henderson? She whispered, almost disbelieving. She knew him as a fair and kind employer, but this was beyond anything she could have imagined. He paid? He defended you? A wave of gratitude washed over her. Oh, Elena, thank God. Thank God for him. She hugged her daughter tightly, tears of relief now mixing with the earlier sadness. He is a good man, Elena. A very good man. Meanwhile, back in his quiet, spacious mansion, Mr. Henderson sat in his study, a book unread in his hands. His mind kept replaying the scene at the restaurant. He thought of Elena's quiet dignity, her honest answers, and the simple truth in her eyes. He had seen too many entitled young people in his life, too many who valued superficiality over substance. Elena was different. She possessed a rare combination of intelligence, resilience, and an unwavering moral compass. He wasn't interested in charity. He was interested in potential. He felt a strong, almost paternal, desire to help her, not just to alleviate her immediate distress, but to truly empower her. He began to consider how he could genuinely assist Elena, something beyond a kind word or a paid meal. He owned several businesses, each with various departments and needs. He thought about where her skills, her drive, and her natural intelligence might best be utilized. He pictured her in a professional setting, learning, growing, contributing. He saw an opportunity within his own company, a place where she could truly thrive. This wasn't about pity. It was about investing in talent. The next morning, Mr. Henderson subtly approached Maria. Maria, he began, his voice casual, as if making polite conversation. I was just thinking, your daughter Elena, she seems like a very bright young woman. What is she studying? What are her interests? academically speaking. He watched Maria carefully, ensuring his questions didn't sound too pointed. He needed to understand Elena's background and aspirations better to make an informed decision. Maria, still glowing from Elena's account of the previous night, happily shared details about Elena's passion for economics and her dream of working in finance, despite the financial limitations that had always stood in her way. She spoke of Elena's excellent grades, her quick mind, and her determination. Mr. Henderson listened intently, a plan beginning to solidify in his mind. A day later, Elena, still feeling a mix of gratitude and a lingering sense of unease from the date, decided she needed to properly thank Mr. Henderson. She found his number in her mother's phone, and with a nervous flutter in her stomach, dialed it. "Mr. Henderson," she began, her voice a little shaky. "This is Elena. I just wanted to call and thank you again for everything. You really saved me." Mr. Henderson's voice was warm and reassuring. "Elena, it was my pleasure. I meant what I said. You deserve better than that." He then shifted the conversation. "Actually, Elena, I've been thinking. Your mother mentioned your interest in economics and finance. It just so happens one of my companies, Henderson Financial Group, has an opening for an entry-level position in our administrative department. It's not glamorous, but it's a foot in the door, a chance to learn the ropes and see if the financial world is truly for you. We value bright, dedicated individuals, and I believe you fit that description perfectly." Elena was stunned. Disbelief warred with a surge of overwhelming joy. An entry-level position? In finance? With Mr. Henderson's company? It was more than she could have ever dreamed of. Her mind raced with the possibilities. This wasn't just a job, it was a pathway, an opportunity to break free from the cycle of struggle, to pursue her true aspirations. "Mr. Henderson," she stammered, I don't know what to say. That would be incredible. A dream come true." When Elena told Maria about the job offer, Maria's reaction was pure, unadulterated joy. She clapped her hands together, tears streaming down her face. "An answer to our prayers, Elena. An answer to our prayers," she exclaimed, hugging her daughter tightly. "This is it, mija. Your chance. Don't let it go." Maria saw it as divine intervention, a turning point that would finally allow Elena to escape the life of hardship they had known. Elena, still buzzing with excitement, readily accepted the job offer. It felt like the universe had finally opened a door for her, a door that had seemed permanently closed just days before. This was the first step, a significant shift in her life's trajectory. The humiliation of the blind date, the sting of Kevin's words, all faded into the background, replaced by a potent sense of hope and purpose. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but she was ready. She was ready to work hard, to learn, and to prove that Mr. Henderson's faith in her was well placed. Her new path had officially begun. Elena's first day at Henderson Financial Group arrived quickly, bringing with it a mix of excitement and a deep knot of nervousness in her stomach. She woke up before her alarm, the early morning light filtering through her small bedroom window. She carefully ironed her best blouse and skirt, clothes that felt a little too formal for her usual life, but she was determined to make a good impression. As she left the apartment, Maria hugged her tightly, whispering words of encouragement and pride. The bus ride to the office was a blur of anticipation. Elena clutched her small handbag, going over her mental checklist of things to remember. She knew this was her big chance, and she was going to seize it with both hands. Stepping into the sleek, modern lobby of Henderson Financial Group felt like entering a different world. The air was cool, the surfaces gleamed, and people moved with a focused professional energy. She reported to HR, completed her initial paperwork, and was then introduced to her supervisor, Mrs. Davies, a kind but no-nonsense woman with a sharp gaze. Mrs. Davies showed her to her desk, a small but functional space in an open-plan office, and gave her a basic overview of her tasks. Elena was assigned to the administrative department, mostly handling data entry, filing, and assisting with scheduling. It wasn't glamorous, as Mr. Henderson had said, but it was a foot in the door, and Elena was ready to learn everything she could. Elena quickly adapted to the corporate environment. She watched, she listened, and she asked questions. She absorbed new information like a sponge, eager to understand the systems and processes. Her strong work ethic, honed by years of helping her mother and working odd jobs, immediately shone through. She was often the first to arrive and the last to leave, ensuring all her tasks were completed with meticulous care. She knew she had a lot to prove, not just to her new colleagues, but to herself. Every completed task, every new skill learned, felt like a small victory. However, it wasn't all smooth sailing. Elena faced some initial challenges. The office culture was different from anything she had experienced. There were unspoken rules, subtle hierarchies, and occasional office politics she struggled to understand. Some of her colleagues, mostly from more privileged backgrounds, sometimes made casual remarks about designer brands or weekend getaways that made Elena feel a little out of place. She often found herself eating lunch alone, listening to the chatter around her, feeling a pang of self-doubt. Could she truly belong here? Despite these moments, she pushed through, reminding herself of her purpose and her mother's sacrifices. Mr. Henderson, true to his nature, maintained a professional distance but kept a watchful eye on Elena's progress. He received regular, discreet reports from Mrs. Davies, who consistently praised Elena's diligence and quick learning. Occasionally, he would pass by her desk, offer a brief, encouraging word, or suggest a resource she might find helpful, acting as an informal mentor without making it obvious. These small gestures meant a great deal to Elena, reaffirming his belief in her and fueling her determination. She saw him as a distant, yet guiding presence. Slowly but surely, Elena began to build positive relationships with her colleagues. Her consistent dedication and positive attitude started to break down the initial barriers. She offered to help others when her own work was done, and her genuine willingness to learn earned her respect. She found common ground with a few of her teammates, sharing stories and laughter during breaks. The feeling of being an outsider began to fade, replaced by a growing sense of belonging. She realized that hard work and kindness transcended social backgrounds. One afternoon, Elena noticed a recurring issue with the company's internal filing system for client reports. It was a minor problem, causing small delays and occasional confusion, but it was persistent. Instead of just noting it, Elena spent her lunch breaks analyzing the system, identifying the bottleneck, and proposing a simple, logical solution to her supervisor. Mrs. Davies was impressed by Elena's initiative and problem-solving skills. The proposed change was implemented and immediately improved efficiency. It was a small victory, but it showcased Elena's ability to not just follow instructions, but to think critically and contribute. Elena's efforts did not go unnoticed. Her immediate supervisor, Mrs. Davies, called her into her office one day. "Elena," she began, a warm smile on her face, "I just wanted to tell you how impressed I am with your work. Your dedication, your willingness to learn, and your keen eye for detail are truly exceptional. That filing system improvement was brilliant. We're lucky to have you." Elena felt a blush creep up her neck, but a surge of pride warmed her chest. This was the recognition she had been working for. Back home, Maria observed Elena's transformation with immense pride. Elena carried herself with new confidence, her shoulders a little straighter, her eyes brighter. The heavy burden of worry that had always shadowed Maria's face began to lift. As their financial situation slowly but steadily improved, Elena was able to contribute more to the household, helping with bills, and even buying Maria a few small comforts she had long gone without. Maria would often just watch Elena, a quiet smile on her face, knowing that her daughter was finally on a path to a better life. Elena's confidence blossomed with each passing week. She gained new skills, understood more complex financial concepts, and felt a growing sense of competence. She started to envision a long-term career path within Henderson Financial Group, seeing possibilities she never thought existed for her. The fear and self-doubt that had plagued her during the blind date felt like a distant memory, replaced by a potent sense of purpose. She was building something real, something substantial, with her own hard work and intelligence. The part ended with Elena feeling a profound sense of purpose and belonging. The humiliation of that blind date, the sting of Kevin's cruel words, now seemed like a strange, painful memory. It had been a catalyst, an unexpected turning point that had led her to this new life, this new opportunity. She realized that sometimes the worst moments can lead to the greatest changes. She was no longer just Maria's daughter, the maid's child. She was Elena, an aspiring professional at Henderson Financial Group, with a future that looked brighter than she had ever dared to dream. Elena consistently exceeded expectations in her role, which was becoming more demanding and allowed her to take on increased responsibilities. She had a natural ability to lead, even in small ways, guiding newer team members through complex tasks and offering insights during group discussions. Her colleagues often sought her out for advice, recognizing her sharp mind and practical approach to problem solving. It was clear to everyone around her that Elena wasn't just doing her job, she was actively shaping it. Mr. Henderson, true to his discreet nature, continued to observe Elena's progress from a distance. Impressed by her unwavering dedication and obvious talent, he subtly arranged for her to receive additional training and development opportunities. These weren't just generic courses. They were tailored workshops focusing on advanced financial analysis, strategic planning, and leadership skills. Elena attended evening seminars and weekend retreats, soaking up knowledge like a sponge. She understood that these opportunities were invaluable, and she made the most of every single one, often staying late to review materials and prepare for the next session. She knew this was a chance many people only dreamed of, and she wasn't going to waste it. Then, a more senior position opened up within the company. It was for a junior financial analyst, a role that required a deeper understanding of market trends and client portfolios. Elena's immediate supervisor, Mrs. Davies, called her into her office again, this time with a more serious expression. "Elena," she said, "we have an opening for a junior financial analyst. Given your performance, your dedication, and the skills you've acquired, I strongly encourage you to apply. I believe you're ready for this next step." Elena's heart pounded with a mix of excitement and nerves. This was a significant leap, a role she had only recently dared to dream about. The application process was rigorous. Elena spent countless hours meticulously preparing her resume, highlighting her achievements and the new skills she had gained. She practiced interview questions with her colleagues, refining her answers and building her confidence. She knew this was her chance to truly prove herself, not just to Mr. Henderson or Mrs. Davies, but to herself. She wanted to show that her background didn't define her, that her capabilities were what mattered. Mr. Henderson, while maintaining his professional distance, ensured that Elena's application received fair consideration. He didn't directly influence the hiring committee, but a quiet word here, a subtle nod there, ensured that her name was prominent, and her qualifications were thoroughly reviewed. He trusted his team to make the right decision, but he also knew that sometimes deserving candidates could be overlooked without a little push in the right direction. He had seen enough talent wasted over the years to know that sometimes opportunity needed a gentle nudge. After a series of challenging interviews, Elena received the call. She had secured the promotion. The news felt surreal. She was no longer an entry-level assistant. She was a junior financial analyst. This move came with a significant increase in salary and, more importantly, a substantial leap in responsibilities. She would be directly involved in more complex projects, working closely with senior analysts and even presenting to clients. It was a tangible validation of all her hard work, all the late nights, and all the self-doubt she had pushed through. The impact of Elena's increased income on Maria's life was profound. The constant financial burden that had weighed on Maria for years finally began to lift. Elena was able to pay off old debts, cover all the household expenses, and, most importantly, tell her mother that she no longer needed to work as a maid. Maria, initially resistant, couldn't deny the relief that washed over her. She had dreamed of retirement for so long, and now, thanks to Elena, it was a reality. She could finally rest, enjoy her days, and pursue the small hobbies she had always put off. Elena, feeling an overwhelming sense of gratitude and wanting to give back to the woman who had sacrificed everything for her, did something she had only imagined. She found a small, comfortable home in a quiet neighborhood, not far from her own apartment, and bought it for Maria. It wasn't a mansion, but it was Maria's own space, free from the demands of others, a place where she could truly relax. Presenting the keys to her mother was one of the proudest moments of Elena's life, a tangible expression of her success and unending love. Maria wept tears of joy, hugging Elena tightly, unable to express the depth of her gratitude. Elena's professional success began to subtly change her social standing as well. She started attending corporate events, networking with influential people, and engaging in conversations about economics and business strategy. She was no longer defined by her past struggles or the $5. She was respected for her intellect, her drive, and her contributions. People sought her out, not out of pity, but out of genuine admiration for her capabilities. She found herself in circles she never thought she would access, and she navigated them with grace and confidence. Looking ahead, Elena felt a renewed sense of purpose. She knew she had the power to shape her own destiny, not just for herself, but for her family. She wanted to continue growing, learning, and contributing. The path ahead was still challenging, but she faced it with a quiet strength, knowing that she had overcome far greater obstacles. The memory of the blind date, the humiliation, and the single $5 bill still lingered, but now it served as a powerful reminder of how far she had come and how much more she was capable of achieving. She was building a new legacy, one brick at a time, for herself and for her mother. Months later, the world felt much different to Elena. Her new role had taken her to a corporate charity gala, an event she would never have dreamed of attending just a year prior. She moved through the room with a quiet confidence, chatting with colleagues and industry leaders, a far cry from the nervous young woman who once agonized over a $5 meal. She wore a simple yet elegant dress, a testament to her refined taste and improved financial standing, but more importantly, to her inner poise. She felt comfortable in her own skin, no longer trying to hide or apologize for her background. As she was discussing a new investment portfolio with a potential client, a familiar voice cut through the background noise. "Elena? Is that really you?" She turned, and her smile faltered slightly. Standing there, a glass of champagne in his hand, was Kevin. He looked older, perhaps a bit more worn than she remembered, but the same entitled smirk was trying to form on his lips. His eyes, however, held a mixture of shock and something else she couldn't quite place. Perhaps regret, perhaps calculation. He clearly recognized her, but the image he held of her was trying to reconcile with the confident woman in front of him. "Kevin," she replied, her voice steady and even, betraying none of the old hurt that flickered for a second. She offered a polite, almost distant nod, then turned back to her conversation partner, subtly indicating the interaction was over. But Kevin was not one to be easily dismissed. He stepped closer, interrupting her. I can't believe it's you. You look incredible. I mean, really, truly amazing." He stammered a bit, clearly thrown off balance. "I've been meaning to apologize, for that night. I was a complete jerk. Young, stupid. You know how it is." He tried to flash a charming smile, but it felt forced, almost desperate. He looked her up and down, a new kind of appraisal in his eyes, one that was clearly motivated by her current status rather than genuine admiration. "I heard you're doing really well. You're working for Henderson Industries, right? I have some contacts there. Maybe we could catch up properly sometime." Elena turned fully to him, her client discreetly stepping back, sensing the personal nature of the exchange. Her expression remained calm, almost serene. "Kevin, thank you for your apology. It's appreciated." She paused, letting her words hang in the air for a moment. "But that night was a long time ago. I've moved on. And frankly, I have no interest in catching up." Her tone was firm, leaving no room for negotiation. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't show anger, just a quiet, unshakable resolve. She was no longer the girl who had to endure his insults. She was a woman who knew her worth. Kevin's face fell. He had clearly expected a different reaction, perhaps a chance to worm his way back into her life now that she was successful. He mumbled something about understanding and quickly retreated, his tail between his legs. The brief exchange had highlighted Elena's immense personal growth and resilience. She didn't need to yell or make a scene. Her quiet strength and self-respect were enough to put him in his place. She no longer sought validation from others. Her validation came from within, from her achievements, and from the knowledge that she had overcome so much. From across the room, Mr. Henderson observed the entire interaction. He had seen Kevin approach Elena, and he had watched Elena's calm, dignified response. A small, knowing smile played on his lips. He felt a profound sense of pride, not just for Elena's professional accomplishments, but for the incredible character she had developed. He had merely given her a push, but she had done all the heavy lifting, all the growing, all the becoming. Later that evening, as the gala was winding down, Elena found herself standing near Mr. Henderson. "Mr. Henderson," she began, a genuine warmth in her voice. "Thank you for everything, for that night, for the opportunity, for believing in me." She hesitated, then added, "That $5, it wasn't just money. It was a turning point. It showed me what I didn't want, and it opened the door to what I could be." Mr. Henderson looked at her, his eyes kind. "Elena," he said softly, "you didn't need me to believe in you. You already had it within you. I just saw a spark, and you did the rest. You earned every bit of your success. Your hard work, your intelligence, your integrity. Those are yours. I simply held a door open. He paused, then continued. Never forget that. Your journey is your own, and it's a testament to who you are. He felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing he had made a difference, not by giving her everything, but by giving her a chance to prove herself. The scene implicitly contrasted Kevin's superficiality with Elena's genuine achievement. Kevin, still chasing external markers of success and trying to latch onto others, while Elena had built her own success from the ground up, fueled by her character and determination. The encounter with Kevin, rather than being a setback, only solidified Elena's sense of closure regarding her past. She was no longer defined by the humiliation, but by her accomplishments. The memory of that night and the $5 had been transformed from a source of shame into a powerful symbol of her resilience and triumph. She was free from it, truly free, and ready for whatever came next. Elena's journey was far from over. It was merely entering a new, more impactful phase. She continued her ascent within the company, taking on increasingly complex and strategic roles. Her ability to analyze challenging situations, innovate solutions, and lead diverse teams made her an indispensable asset. She spearheaded several major projects that significantly boosted the company's market share and profitability. Her name became synonymous with efficiency and forward-thinking leadership, earning her respect from colleagues and industry peers alike. She wasn't just a manager or a director. She was a visionary, shaping the future direction of the enterprise. But her success was never just about personal gain. Remembering the struggles of her own youth, Elena felt a strong pull to give back. She became deeply involved in philanthropic endeavors, dedicating a substantial portion of her time and resources to causes close to her heart. She focused on initiatives that supported underprivileged youth, understanding firsthand the barriers they faced. She helped establish scholarship programs, funded after-school learning centers, and championed mentorship programs designed to provide young people with the guidance and opportunities she had once desperately needed. For Elena, success was not complete if it couldn't be shared. Mentoring became a particular passion. Elena actively sought out and guided young professionals, especially those from disadvantaged backgrounds who reminded her of her younger self. She shared her experiences openly, offering practical advice on navigating corporate environments, overcoming self-doubt, and building a resilient mindset. She taught them that intelligence and hard work were crucial, but so were integrity and kindness. Her mentees often spoke of her as a beacon of hope and a source of unwavering encouragement, a testament to her empathetic leadership. As years passed, Mr. Henderson, now in his late 70s, began to think about his legacy and the future of his vast empire. He had watched Elena grow from a timid, hopeful young woman into a formidable business leader. He saw in her not just competence, but a depth of character and a commitment to ethical leadership that was rare. He started entrusting her with more significant responsibilities, gradually shifting the reins of power. Eventually, he made the decision to retire, confident that the company he had built would be in the most capable hands. Elena, with her proven track record and unwavering dedication, was the natural successor to many of his key roles, becoming a pivotal figure in the organization's continued success. The professional relationship that had begun with a simple act of kindness blossomed into a deep, respectful friendship. Elena and Mr. Henderson would often share meals, discussing business strategies, global events, and even personal philosophies. Their bond was built on mutual admiration, shared values, and a profound understanding of each other's journeys. He became a grandfather figure to her, and she, in turn, became like the daughter he never had. Maria, Elena's mother, continued to live a comfortable and happy life. Thanks to Elena's success, she had long since retired from being a maid, enjoying her golden years in the small, comfortable home Elena had bought for her. Maria often recounted the story of the $5 to anyone who would listen, transforming it from a painful memory into a beloved family legend. It was a tale of humility, resilience, and the unexpected turns life could take. Her eyes would well up with pride each time she spoke of her daughter, a living testament to the power of perseverance. Elena's story became an inspiration, not just within her immediate circle, but within the broader community and even beyond. It demonstrated that true potential is not dictated by one starting point, and that perseverance, coupled with a touch of kindness, can indeed overcome even the most daunting adversities. Her journey served as a powerful reminder that while circumstances might humble you, they do not define you. Elena built a life that was rich and fulfilling, both professionally and personally. She was surrounded by a network of friends and colleagues who valued her for her intellect, her integrity, and her compassionate spirit. Her relationships were authentic, free from the superficial judgments that had once plagued her. She had found love, built a family, and created a home filled with warmth and laughter, a stark contrast to the scarcity of her early years. The enduring lesson of her story was clear. A single act of kindness, whether it is a quiet observation or a bold intervention, can set in motion a chain of events that transforms lives. But ultimately, it is the individual's courage, hard work, and unwavering belief in themselves that truly paves the way to lasting change. Mr. Henderson had opened a door, but Elena had walked through it, built her own path, and created her own destiny. Elena looked forward to a future filled with purpose and impact. She continued to innovate, to lead, and to give back, forever grateful for the Millionaire's intervention that had started it all, but fully aware that her own hard work, her indomitable spirit, and her refusal to be defined by a $5 humiliation had truly been the architects of her extraordinary life. Her journey was a beacon, shining brightly for all who dared to dream beyond their present circumstances, proving that character, compassion, and resilience were the greatest riches of all.